Great. So I think we should start now, Sanket.
Okay. Okay, so welcome everyone to Talking Tech with Tech Engineering, Talking Data Science. I'm Sanket and we have here Kaushal and Arpit as our hosts.
Hello, I'm
Hi,
Kaushal.
And most importantly, we have Bhargav as our speaker here. Bhargav, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hello everyone. I am Bhargav. Uh, Currently, I'm in my final year at Ahmedabad University, and apart from that, I'm a undergraduate researcher working at Ahmedabad University, like as an undergraduate researcher, and an AI engineering intern at TrueMind Software System.
Yes, a lot to learn from him.
Yeah. Also, I think Bhargav also used to host like a great series called Explore ML, and he has also influenced like students like us beforehand, and I think it's going to be a great experience this time as well.
Yes, thank you for being here, Bhargav.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I must say, it's I'm conducting a like this type of talk after such a long, because due to this COVID, we never had an opportunity to online workshops are not that much,
Yes, yes.
gets that learning value. So
Yeah.
in previous time, we had a wonderful time to conducting this machine learning workshop at Ahmedabad University and outside the Ahmedabad University as well.
Yeah. So also one more thing, I'd like to welcome all the members from PyData community who have joined us today, and I think yeah. So welcome all. Right. Yeah. So what are we talking about today? So yeah.
We are going to talk about data science difference between like machine learning, deep learning, data science, and different data technologies. We are also going to talk about whether is AI a boon or a curse. We may explore different roles in data science and how is it like working with data. And lastly, yes, we would like inputs from your side as well. So if you have any questions or anything for our speaker, please drop them in the chat. If you are shy to like unmute yourself. You are welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question as well.
I think they are welcome to unmute themselves at towards the end of the session. Between the session, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. Okay. So Bhargav, over to you. Like, let's start with like what is data science and what sort of comes under this big domain.
So let me just start with the 3 to 4 words: data science, data scientist, machine learning engineer, data engineer, and data analyst. So
Yeah.
in most of the cases, whenever I see on the internet or while discussing anything, these words are used interchangeably, because
Right.
many times it's being a machine learning engineer and being a data scientist, we think that it's just we are using machine learning to take the data, process it, get the output, and voila, we are done.
Yeah.
But there is very fundamental difference between all of these four fields. They may contain word data, but it doesn't mean they are the same. So let me just start with the word let's start with the data scientist.
Yeah.
So the
Yes.
main job of data scientist is to take model, give it data, understand the data, and understand the output of the model. Let's say we are getting a
Okay.
98% accuracy, but what where we will use 98% accuracy? What does it mean when model accuracy is 98%? So that's the job of a data scientist.
Okay.
A machine learning engineer would work on a major aspect of coding. Machine learning engineer would try different models, or maybe if he's also a researcher kind of a person, and he will try to create his own or her own models as well. So that's the job of machine learning engineer. So they are a bit of overlapping, but they are not the same. So that's the main thing to understand over here. Third thing is about data engineer. Now, so those who are thinking to like they want to be data scientists, the sexiest job of 24/7. But whenever you will join a data science team, your first task would be to be a data engineer. You won't play
Okay.
with machine learning models directly. You may know big words like deep learning, CNN, LSTM models, recurrent neural network, fast RCNN, a lot of things. But the first task which you will get is to data engineering. You have to work at least 1 to 2 years in the field of data engineering just to understand how to handle data, because in data science there is only 10% of machine learning, 90% of data engineering.
Okay.
So it's my personal learning as well. I have learned it in a hard way. So when I was starting my sophomore first year, I like when I understood machine learning, I was like, we just need to take data, put it into a model, let the model run, and yeah, we have a model ready. And believe me, I have tried to do that many times in many projects, and I have failed badly, like literally badly failed. I have like let's say even machine learning models get a 98% accuracy, but I was not having a justification that why it's 98%. And this was the first question of any faculty. We
Yes.
agree that your model is 98% accurate, but why? How you make this model 98% accurate? Those were the answers that a person should think on. And if you want to find those answers, first you need to dive into the data. You have to understand data. So these three things should be clear: data engineering, data scientist, and machine learning engineer.
I'm really glad that you addressed that first. Like people had many questions. This was the primary question, that what exactly is the difference between like data science, machine learning engineer, and deep learning engineer. So yes, it was really good to clear that off. First of all.
Conheceu? Como? Caiu. E Pogba.
Yeah, continue. Yeah,
Next.
so
Yeah, please next.
Yes. Next, like what's that next cover question remains to be like, what exactly is data science like?
yeah, so what is the roadmap for data science
Yeah.
or some something like that? Yeah.
Sure. So let's say before going into the roadmap, let's think about as a data science as a broader perspective, because data science itself is a very big field. Even you can do BTech in data science. There will be some courses like Bachelor of Technology. We say that BTech in computer science, but in near future there will be courses in BTech in data science, because this field itself has grown such a big and impacted majority aspects of our life. Like it's very hard to imagine any field of area which is not touched by machine learning or data science.
Yeah.
Even biology, in biochemistry, biology science, even neuroscience had started implementing methods of artificial intelligence to understand the behavior of a neuron, a single neuron. So okay, so let's start discuss each and every component of a data science.
Yes.
So in a typically a job of a data scientist is like initially you will work on the data engineering aspect.
Yeah.
So, okay, there will be a big team. You won't be a single person working as a data scientist, because whenever you use word data science, team comes auto by default. You cannot be a data scientist alone, and you can be, and there's a different term for those people. It's called unicorn in data science. A single person who is able to maintain everything. So, but there are very few unicorns in data science, and it's very hard to be a unicorn because there is a lot to learn and lot to implement. Okay, so let's start with this diagram. Actually, the whoever the person designed this diagram, that person must be an amazing and will have such a deep knowledge of data science pipeline and data science overall process, because this sums up everything. So let's start from the first this image. In first part, we collect the data from web scraping or by doing experimental research. We collect the data, and then that collected data. Now, data collection could be done by anyone. Let's say you are working on a project in which you want to analyze some data related to water quality. So data would be collected by a person who is expert in that particular domain, not a data scientist or not a machine learning engineer. Data will come from that particular person or a expert person from those particular field to a data engineer. From here, a job of data engineer starts. Major jobs are first to organize the data, because we have a vast amount of data. It could be a SQL data, no SQL data. It could be a so let's say no SQL data contains series of videos which are unstructured. So first job is to uh, like, or manually organize the data. That's the first job. Second is to data cleaning. So we all know that garbage in is garbage out. So if you give your model a garbage data, your model is gonna perform very worse. Like it definitely will follow garbage in, garbage out. So here the job of data engineering, data engineering person start. That person will collect the data, put it in a very organized manner, And there are many technologies, many different databases, which we'll discuss further. And then start cleaning. Now, data cleaning and validation, these are the very most important process, because you need to make sure that your data is clean. Your model can learn from your data, and it's a repetitive process. So when you collect the data, you explore the data, you check whether there are any missing values or whether there are any uh, let's say outliers, false records, or which are so you need to either discard them or either correct them, and there are many methods to correct them. So that part is handled by a data engineering person, and that's a repetitive process. It corrects the data, it tries to validate the data from some analytical form or some ideal results, and then again explore it clean. And after the green signal from a data engineer, the data goes for with a machine learning engineer or a data analyst. That guy will use machine learning techniques. Now, we whenever we think about a big data or anything, we just jump to deep learning. That we have a big data, we need a
Yeah.
complex model, let's use deep learning. But believe me, most of the time, a linear regression is sufficient to answer a lot of questions. Linear regression, SVM, KNN. These three algorithms are, you should must try first these three algorithms, then move to some complex models, and then deep learning. So most of the time, data scientists play with these algorithms to make their predictions or start understanding the data, start making the inferences from the data. So in this slide, you can also see that data is divided to train and test.
Yes.
So those who have started playing with the deep learning and machine learning concept, they have heard these words, and what is training data and what is testing data. But to just give an analogy, whenever you are preparing for JEE, that's your training data. When JEE papers come to your eyes, that's the
Yeah.
testing data, and that's the real test.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
may get 340 out of 340 on your class test, or maybe above 300 or about 250 plus. But if you are not working well in original JEE main exam, man, you need to leave IIT or take a 1 year job. That's the same thing with this as well. Your model may perform 99.99% accuracy on training data, but if it's not, it's around 20 to 30% test data. Either you need to change your model or your data is wrong.
That's a really
Those are the
relatable analogy you made.
Yeah.
because like uh, so here I'm assuming that I'm on the other side there are engineering students, and they must be able to relate this JEE concept, because we all have given JEE exam, and
Yeah.
our experience is completely different from each other. So
Yes, yes.
for and lot of the case there this analogy works very well, right?
Right. So
Yes.
yeah, now again, like I think we also have some beginners who have joined us, and I think for them, so some people have asked me this question, and this question must have been asked to you as well. That so they are complete beginner, and they sort of want to start with machine learning or data science, and they sort of ask for advice like what should I do, what should I read. So what sort of advice do you have for them, like how to get into machine learning, or maybe from where to start?
Sure. So see, guys, if you are starting with the machine learning, you need a first you need a very high motivation, and this motivation is everywhere. Whenever you see, like let's say Nvidia, Google, Microsoft, IBM, these all tech giants, and I'm just naming few. Netflix is there, and each and every name any IT company which is not using AI. So we know that, and we have seen blogs and videos like AI will be the future. AI is a new electricity. So we have a motivation, but this motivation stops working when you hit the maths, because ultimately whatever word you use, machine learning, data science, or anything, it's just doing statistics in the computer. That's it.
Yeah, agreed.
Just to give you an amazing idea, the first paper, many of you have heard about LSTM networks, which are used very widely to model a time series data. LSTM models were proposed in 90s. Backpropagation algorithm came in 1956, if I remember correct. And backpropagation algorithm is the backbone of each and every machine learning model, including deep learning. So algorithms were existing back there. The only difference which was not there was computational power and data. Now we have computational power and data, both of them. So at the end, what I want to say is machine learning is just mathematics doing in a computer. That's it. There's nothing big thing or nothing magical box it is. It's just we are doing statistical analysis on the computer. So whenever you are starting with machine learning, and if you start with the maths, man, you are the motivation will go just like this. If you don't enjoy maths, if you really enjoy maths and this triple summation and partial derivatives and other like differential equations and everything, you will love it. But that's a very rare case. That's a very maybe 1 out of 100 student enjoy doing mathematics. Originally, everyone says that I love maths, but deep down we all know we hate maths.
Yeah.
That's the unspoken truth.
Yes.
Okay. So whenever you are getting started, do not go with the course which are offering you to make you understand mathematics. Yeah, this advice is bit different than the usual advice that professor gives you. That doing model.predict is not machine learning, but believe me, when you are starting, do model.predict only. Try to
Yeah.
use scikit-learn and those kind of libraries to make a small models. Just model import, model.fit, model.predict, and model.evaluate. Do not think further that how this will work. Just learn the chronology, the flow of the machine learning project. And once you are, let's say, 6 to 8 months in using these libraries and everything, you will start doing more complex project. And as you will start doing more complex project, the need to understand mathematics will automatically appear. But it will come with one benefit that you know the overall process of machine learning. When you will be learning that, okay, I'm learning gradient descent, you will know why you are learning gradient descent, what the gradient descent is doing. You will be having that intuition, and that intuition will help you to understand maths. So I'm not saying do not learn maths. If you want to be a good
Yes.
machine learning engineer, please understand maths, and not just machine learning engineer. See, the major difference between a good engineer and a great engineer is mathematics. That's it.
Right. So to
That's the
sort of
main difference.
yeah, so to sort of sum it up, you're saying that if someone is starting anew, then they should probably look at like the simple aspects first, and then and keep motivation to like go till the end and climb the mountain. And as they go
Yes.
and climb, they sort of like they can explore the maths, and that's like I think great insight on how to start machine learning. So yeah,
I guess
Actually,
for
because
that,
I have, yeah, please.
yeah, one good place for like starting things is like deeplearning.ai, like Coursera courses by Andrew Ng. Like even
Uh,
he starts it very simple, like how you are going to implement things and sort of then a bit of maths later on.
So actually, in this case, I have a different opinion because the main deep learning, the courses are amazing. That's for sure. Because I myself has done those courses to understand it deeply. But if those who are starting machine learning for the first time, I'm not talking about deep learning. I'm talking about general machine learning and data science. Go with the course of University of Michigan. I think data science in Python, which is
Okay.
available on Coursera. There are 5 courses, and each and every course is designed without considering maths. They teach you how to clean the data, how to import data, how to visualize data, how to use machine learning algorithms directly from the functions, how to evaluate model, and then text mining and everything. So first do that specialization. And I'm not saying that only specialization. You can do anything, but try to focus on initially try to focus on like overall overview of the machine learning, and then start with this Andrew Ng's course on which is Stanford course, which teaches about mathematical perspective, and then deep learning.ai. Because what happened is uh, you this let's say take example of this quantum computing. We all have heard this word, and we know that Google has achieved quantum supremacy in a year, I think 1 or 2 years ago, by their Sycamore process. So we all get fascinated, like I also want to do quantum computing. It's the future, it's the everything. But once you start quantum computing and you see mathematics, man, that's horrible, like literally horrible. I uh, and I'm saying from my personal experience that I took a project in quantum communication. I said I have a 6 month, I'll be able to conquer it. I will work 24 hours. I will do this and that. Believe me, after completing first assignment of the quantum computing course, I was like, okay, I need to change the project at any cost. Even my faculty says that do not. I said, no, sir, I want a simple project. I don't want to do quantum computing in 6 months. I will do quantum computing, but I need some more time to understand the concept. Because understanding concept is a must. You may be able to train your data, you may be able to implement a quantum machine learning algorithm, but if you don't know the concept, man, you are not going to clear any interview. Because in interview, they won't ask, explain me a deep learning model. They will simply ask, explain me SVM algorithm with
Okay.
mathematics.
Okay.
Yeah. So talking about interviews, like let's discuss how is working in data science field, like what sort of work is there, or what sort of research is possible, and how to do that.
So let me divide this question into two manners. One is working in a data science in a corporate world, in which you are supposed to uh, work in a team project where you have to make a product or give a service kind of a thing. Second thing is working as a data scientist in a research lab, and I'll answer both of them separately. And first, I'll start with this corporate world. So whenever you are working in a, let's say, a startup or a big company in a let's say building a product, your main objective as a data scientist is to take a pre-trained model if available, test that model on your requirement, and uh, integrate robustly on a cloud-based service. That's the job of a typical machine learning engineer or data scientist would be. Because at that time, you don't need to create your new model. That's not a research part. Let's say you are doing an object detection kind of a thing. You don't need to create an object detection model from the scratch. There are various pre-trained models available. You just need to select 4 to 5 best model according to your scenario, test them on according to you, destructive testing and everything, and the result and the best model which you get, you have to integrate that into your system. Now, challenge starts when you start integrating. Testing model is super easy. tf.load model, give your model path, you have a model ready. Model.evaluate, check the accuracy, check the curve, and that's it. But when you have that .h5 file, that model, when your job is to integrate them on a GPU or let's say as a service on AWS, that's the real challenge. Because you are gonna spend a lot of sleepless night on fixing the bugs, which may be due to different versions of library, maybe compatibility issue on the servers, how your model will behave from the user request, how it will communicate with the backend services. So that would be a major that is the most of the thing which you do into a startup or in a corporate world. Let me just take it as a corporate world. Second thing is a research. Being a data scientist in a research team or a research lab. At that time, your goal is to improve the models. You have a current model. Let's say you have a 99.99% accuracy of a object detection model, but it is taking a 10 second to process a single frame. Now, that is good. 99.99% accuracy is very good. But can we uh, achieve this same accuracy in 1 second? Is that possible? That's the question you will be answering. And it's just like I'm just giving example of object detection. There are very different areas in which research is ongoing. And there are in your research perspective, there are two things. One is the fundamental machine learning, and then second is the applied machine learning, where you apply machine learning in different area to improve system. And there is a fundamental machine learning, where you actually do research on a single neuron, how you can improve that generalization of machine learning. So I hope I answer your
Yes, yes.
question precisely,
Like
right?
research, like if you are working in research, you are more likely to dive deep into the fundamentals of how it works to improve, to try and improve the model itself.
Like sort of I think like this all the overall idea like focuses more on data processing and like how you are going to apply those things. And so like the instead of focusing on like if we are going choosing as an applied data scientist, I think the more focus is on the data and how you are going to use your libraries and like sort of like Python libraries, say pandas and NumPy, and like that is where the all of it revolves around rather than the model itself.
Yes, that's true. That's very well.
like a lot of process involving training and testing the model itself is automated when sklearn and TensorFlow helps a great deal with creating and training the models. So pre-processing part is something that is not automated. So that is something that one might need to learn very well.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Like there are, we have a very different platform which do automation for a machine learning. We don't need to write any Python code to train a model. It's just a drag and drop kind of a thing. There is a platform named as Orange, which is a you can download that software and you can use it. Those who are starting with machine learning and don't know any programming language, Orange is the best. You just need to just put those circles and connect the dots. That's it. It will train your model. Second thing is Azure ML Studio. That is also a drag and drop thing. But about the pre-processing of data, that will come as you move forward because there is no thumb rule. Because there are thousands of techniques to clean the data. And to understand data cleaning, you need to have a very strong background in statistics. Because let's say you have a data in which there are some missing values. Now, in general, as a first thought, you can do four things: either discard that data or replace this value with mean, either mean, median, and mode. But what will be the impact of choosing these four types of data on your model? You need to test that, and this quality comes as you go. You need to practice, like you need to spend a lot of hours in cleaning the data. And believe me, data cleaning is very tedious job. You you will be scratching your head for many hours, and still your model won't perform because there is a possibility that you are doing something wrong, but there is a possibility that data itself is completely wrong and you are trying to find your solution something at a wrong place. So this that intuition comes as you go ahead, you as you do more projects and as you work in the, let's say, a real-time environment, not just this simple uh, training and testing, but actual taking your model out in the wild and making a product out of it, or making a small app and actually testing on a real world environment.
What's next?
Yeah, sure. Actually,
Yeah.
I for the next part, can you just go to a previous slide? There are some wonderful things which are hidden in this slide. I would like to like those who are starting with this data science or who are at the intermediate level. Uh, Please understand this diagram very nicely because it's a complete diagram starting from collecting data to deploying it. Because if you just let's start from where we left. So we left at training, testing, model engineering, and evaluation. So we have finished that part. Now let's say we have a trainer model. We have a very good training and testing accuracy. We have a model is achieving 99% accuracy, and everything is perfect. Now what? Your user does not understand that accuracy curve. Your user doesn't even know what is ROC curve. So how will you gonna serve your model? Because you have spent a lot of time, your company has spent a lot of time and efforts, computational power in building the model. So they must generate some amount of money to you know compensate and create profit. That's where a role of machine learning engineer comes. Job of machine learning engineer is to take the model. Maybe in a startup you also create the model, but when you are working on a large team on a large corporation, a typical job of machine learning engineer is to take the model and integrate that model into a cloud services and the product. You have a, let's say you have a ready-made model. Your data science person has said that this model is perfect, working fine. This is the proof. This is the documentation, and these are the results. Now it's a job of machine learning engineer to take that model and integrate into the system. At that time, you have to use cloud services like AWS or Google Cloud Platform, integrate that model, and also set a loop kind of a thing by which you can get a feedback. Because when you take your machine learning model out in the wild, there will be many edge cases which you have not think of. There will be a time where a model will suddenly fail or your server will suddenly crash, maybe of over usage or for any reason. So that's where the role of machine learning engineer is. That person will integrate the model, set a loop back for taking a log and monitor the performance and continuously evaluating it. So it's kind of a whole team working together, right?
So what we can take away from that is that you need to be well versed with cloud technologies if you are going to work in a corporate position related to machine learning.
Definitely. Being very good with the cloud technology is very plus point, because at the end, any product you make, any service you write, or even any model you make, that model is not gonna be in your local machine. That model is going to be into production, into a cloud server. So you have to learn about these technologies, and learning about cloud computing is a plus point, because many times what happened is, let's talk about AWS. So AWS has a lot of ready-made models available. Like they cost it, but that's fine. If you can bear the cost, you don't need to spend 1 month in making the model. You just need to call a service. And believe me, that's just a three process job. Create a client in your laptop, create a job, and get the response. That's it. Everything works on JSON format. Send a JSON request to create a job, and get the JSON response of the output. 100 line of code sufficient to do a lot of things, which you will take 1 month to create your own model.
Yeah, adding to that, I think there are like many pre-trained models. Like even if like say if we are like image processing and like CNN kind of thing, we have like ImageNet. In like RNN we have like BERT and Elbow. And so like those models are trained on a lot of like heavy data for a longer period of time with higher computation power, and they like provide you with everything that is needed. And so it of sort of like if we, even we are trying to build something, I think that is still better if we directly use it.
Yes, actually, it's true. Like many times we say that, okay, I don't want to use pre-trained model. I want to make my own. But believe me, it's like reinventing a wheel. For learning purpose, it's really fine if you create your own model. But if you are working in a team where uh, using a model is just a small part of your project, then don't think very much. Just take a pre-trained model, test it, and put it into production. Because as Arpit said, yeah, the best thing about this pre-trained model is that they are very thoroughly trained. They are trained on very large data set, and they have a lot of computational resources. Because if we try to buy our own NVIDIA GPU, it will cost in around 6,000 to $7,000. But these models are trained on already a very big computational powers and very big data. So that's the plus point that we get when you use a pre-trained model. You don't need to train it. You don't need to evaluate it. You don't need to thoroughly test it. You just need to make sure that the model which you are taking fits into your requirement. It's working on the latest version of libraries. So you don't have function depreciation issues.
So and also on like when you said like when you like use your model in your production, that is not the end. Even like the like every one of you heard about the Facebook thing. They have a model and that is biased to something. Say it is biased to the righties ideas or the leftist idea. And like what they are currently working is how they can remove that bias. So how to avoid that bias in prediction. I think there are a lot of ethical questions that are arise on how the models are used. So that is sort of interesting thing if you want to look up.
Right. So it's sort of like a continuous process, and it's a huge process. And to sum it up, like the discussion regarding the whole research versus corporate thing, like what will you say about that?
So basically, from my perspective, uh, if you want to decide in which field you want to go, uh, just think like this: in as a machine learning engineer in corporate, you will your job will be to take the model, integrate it, test it, and maintain it so that it's working fine. That's the corporate thing, where you will learn a lot about software engineering and maintaining your code, integration of your machine learning model into production. And there are various ways to do that, and they vary from application to application. In the research field, you will be trying to create your own model. You won't be thinking about how end user will interact with it. It's not your job into research. You're in research, you think about making something better, and then letting other people who are machine learning engineers use that model to create a product from it, right? Because one person cannot think about everything. If you try to do research from the end user perspective, it won't be impossible, but it will be very hard to make an improvement. So what you do is you just make an improvement into existing one and let other people's think how you can integrate it into something which will be used by end user.
Right. So okay, yeah. So that's like I think it was quite informative. Yeah. So moving on to the next section, if like if someone doesn't want to like continue here, we can move on.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So the next section is like we have a lot of technologies to choose from while doing data science, and like let's talk about this. Like what are the most popular ones? What should people know, and what should people use? Yeah.
Actually, like this slide is completely uh,
Explanatory.
explanatory. Yeah, because what happened after this frame was something we should observe.
Yeah.
I remember this scene very clearly. Like Tom tried to mix everything and try to make a milk, and when he stirred the spoon,
Yeah.
spoon was completely uh, it
Disintegrated.
doesn't come out of the that milk,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? So this is something happens when you mix a lot of things. Like let's say I'm a
Right.
new data scientist, I'm very excited. I say I will use TensorFlow and PyTorch and sklearn, and I will do this analysis and pre-process and blah 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 everything. I combine each and everything to create a best thing, but that would be a garbage. Believe me, I have. And let me give you a very recent example. Today I was presenting about my progress into one of the meetings, like, and I was having one of my friend, one of a very good friend, was presenting along with me. He said that I use a 15 layer deep LSTM model to make predictions. I literally get a straight line. Like you can imagine, let's say your model is trying to learn a sinusoidal wave,
Yeah.
but you say that I will use very complex model. I am very passionate about data science. I want a very big model and it should work 100% right. And you use a very deep layer. You will literally get a straight line. The curve is not going to match at all. He start reducing the layers, and he get the best result only with 2 layers.
Right.
So this is something very uh, thing which everyone has to understand. Like making a deep model or using various technologies is not the solution to him for a problem.
Right.
If you can do things simply, then don't go with deep learning. Even don't go with machine learning. First, ask yourself a question: do I really need a machine learning? Or I
Yeah.
just want to use big jargon words and phrases in my presentation to impress everyone, and then that's why I want to use machine learning. So whenever a thought comes in your mind that, hey, I think I can use deep learning for this, ask yourself first, do I need it? If the answer is yes, then try. If answer is no, do not try to fit deep learning in your system. It will work, but it will like cutting vegetables with a sword. We all have seen
Yeah.
that meme,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
that's not a thing which you want to use. You if you just need a small knife, use a small knife. Do not go with a big sword. It will be a waste of time, resources, energy, and money.
Can you like explain to the beginners like what exactly is the purpose of these? Like they are seeing words on the screen, but they do not understand like what do they exactly mean?
Sure. Like the words which you are seeing on your screen, like NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib. These three libraries will always be there in any Python code. So it's kind of a mantra kind of a thing. If you are writing a code in Python, import Pandas as PD, import NumPy as NP, and import Matplotlib as PLT.
Yeah.
These three libraries will be imported without even thinking, even if I need it or not, right? So, and let me just go with each and every library. So Pandas is basically a library to handle your data. Let's say to train your model, you need a data. But how will you put your data into an organized manner? That's where Pandas come. That's the main role of a Pandas. But even you can use Pandas to visualize the data as well. There are a lot of functions available in Pandas itself to visualize data. But the main job of Pandas is to create a data frame of data frames of the imported data and handle it appropriately, do numerical operations simultaneously on independent data samples. That's the job of a Pandas. NumPy is like if you want to play with the arrays, then NumPy is a must library. If you want to even define an array, you need a NumPy. And it provides a lot of functions. Let's say you have a array of 1,000 samples, and you want to multiply it with another 1,000 samples. In C language, you have to write a for loop. But in Python, if you have both NumPy arrays, just multiply them simply. It will work very, very faster compared to for loop, and it would be very clean and easy to understand the code as well, right? And then comes the Matroid-Lib. So basically, Matroid-Lib is used for the visualization purpose to create a plots. And this is very easy to learn library, used very vastly in the Python community. Like each and every Python beginner knows how to use Matroid-Lib, how to create plots. And if you want to, just to add on this, if you want to create more beautiful plots, let's say research paper level plots, in which you cannot put simple just blue and red line. Those plots should be aesthetic. The plot should like the plot should look like our I should fall in love in the plots. So for that you can use Seaborn library, Seaborn. So these two libraries are for visualization. sklearn is for simple machine learning, conventional machine learning, which we do, SVM, KNN, linear regression. Everything is handled by sklearn. As I said, import, model.fit, predict, and evaluate. That's it. sklearn will handle everything. And PyTorch, and PyTorch is a framework. I won't say it's a library, but it's a framework. How you can handle, and it's developed by Facebook and mainly used for deep learning perspective like TensorFlow, right? So PyTorch has just occurred recently, so it's gaining its name and community. And TensorFlow is the one which is the king of all the libraries. Like if you are using deep learning, import TensorFlow as TF. That's one thing which you must have, or either Keras.
So like I think the TensorFlow 2.0 has adopted like Keras inside itself, and
Yes.
yeah. So like mostly TensorFlow is like go thing, and it is like really quick. Like in a snap, like you have to like 3-4 lines and your all models is ready.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Keras is basically like sklearn on steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I want to add one thing, like just it's a kind of a best practice kind of a thing. When you are using Keras, do not import independently. Do not write import Keras directly. Always use Keras which is integrated into a TensorFlow.
Yeah.
If you use Keras independently, you will have version control issues. And I have spent 4 hours debugging a code. Why it's not working? Then I realized I just need to import TensorFlow as TF and import tf.keras.
Yeah.
So it creates, because as the libraries are getting updated, a lot of function has been changed or upgraded for optimization purpose. If you have two different versions of libraries, it will create a lot of issues.
So also to add on about the thing about like PyTorch, like I know a bit. So PyTorch is basically have you when you like write models in PyTorch, it is basically how you write the complete your Python code. Like this is the first step, this is the second step, and so on. Like everything you have to define in a function or so, and that is how you create things in PyTorch. While in TensorFlow, if you have used like sequential, it is just you have to pass the layers into an array, and it will sort of make the model for you. And like that
So
is not just the limit of TensorFlow. Like even if you want to go deep inside it, you can still like do things the similar way as PyTorch. Like you can write custom functions and so in PyTorch, in TensorFlow. Sorry.
TensorFlow sort of provides its own APIs to create neural networks, and it's simpler according to us. But
Yeah, definitely.
and,
If you are
yeah,
like if you are starting with deep learning, I will suggest go with the TensorFlow, or do not start with the PyTorch directly, because it will take a much more understanding of how a language works, and to like learn about PyTorch, because it's a bit different than the TensorFlow. Not a bit, a lot different than TensorFlow. It's like transitioning from C to Java.
Right.
You will hit, like if you are a C coder and if you start with Java, like logic remains the same, but the way you use your logic to integrate into a code, that's a different. That's a It is similar to TensorFlow and PyTorch.
Right. So these are also not the only technologies that we have. Like we also sort of have these. And what would you like to tell our
Sure.
listeners about these? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I like let me start with by saying this: all the logos which you see here, you don't need to learn them, each and every of them. So do not get afraid that, oh, okay, I need to be learn each and everything to be a data scientist. No, even if you just learn 50%, that's fine. Really, that's fine, because if you learn 50%, other 50% will automatically be covered using intuition.
Yeah.
That's a very plus point, and which comes after some experience. So let us start with this first OpenCV. So those who wants to go into field of computer vision, OpenCV is like a Bible. Please go through each and every document part of it, because a lot of functions are already implemented in OpenCV. It provides the rich functionality to handle images and videos as well. So OpenCV stands for Open Computer Vision, and it's a very important library for any computer vision for any computer vision project. Then let's move a bit downward. PyTorch. So yeah, as we discussed, PyTorch was launched by Facebook, and it provides some different functionality than TensorFlow, but it's not like PyTorch is better than TensorFlow. Both are at same level. It's just about what type of application you need, right? So if when you will learn about TensorFlow and more about how to handle a machine learning project, you will understand when to use PyTorch and when to use TensorFlow, right? So second thing is let's Kubernetes and Docker. So whenever you are, let's say you have a train your model is perfectly fine and you want to integrate it, and your integration is also done. But how will you serve it? For the serving purpose, you use Kubernetes or Dockers. It's resolve the issue. It's resolve the environmental issue. So many times we say that, hey, this thing is working on my machine, but I don't know why it's not working in your machine. That
Yeah.
that statement is resolved by Docker and Kubernetes. Okay. Then we have a Hadoop, and then the second case stands for Keras. So we have already discussed about the Keras, that it's
Yeah.
just a higher level API to use the create a deep learning models and everything. About Hadoop. So Hadoop is the data no uh, is built to manage the high volume of data and do the analytics, right? So when you will do some, let's say you go into industry. In industry, there won't be a data set of only 10 GB. Data set will be terabytes of database and billions of rows to handle, to analyze. At that time, a simple databases do not work. You need a very special databases which are already designed to handle big data. And just to give you a heads up, big data just means a data which is in very high volume. It's not a different kind of a data. Big data stands for data which is very big, which is in high volume and high velocity. And Hadoop helps you to handle that kind of high volume of data. And when you are starting your career as a data scientist, Hadoop is something which you must learn. It's not like it's preferable, but you must know Hadoop, because then and then you will be able to work in the area of big data analytics. And then we have a TensorFlow, our go-to library for deep learning. And then comes this SQL, R, and AWS. So let's focus on AWS and this Google Cloud Platform. Just select any one from both of them. I would prefer AWS because AWS is in the market for a very long year, and it is built to for use from the user perspective. It should be very easy to handle. That was the main objective of AWS, and they wanted to make accessing cloud computing easy. And believe me, using it, if you start using AWS, you will fall in love. I started AWS one month ago. Like I have used it, but not for the production grade environment. And I have not done any kind of courses to learn AWS. I just make my account, give my credit card details to get a free account, and just read a bit about it. What is S3 and what is this services of all kind. If you just start with the console, it's completely intuitive. You don't need to Google or do any kind of 4 week long course. Just go there, read about the documentation, very basic documentation, and start using it. If you know how to handle an array, how to index an array, you can use AWS. That's it. Because everything works on the JSON format. You just
Yeah.
send a request to create process the data, and you get a response of the result in a JSON format. So it's just like doing a front end. You get a JSON format from the backend. You just need to show it fancy in a fancy manner. Basically, that's the front end. You show your JSON data into a fancy format.
Yeah.
The same thing
Yeah.
is about AWS, right?
So,
So yeah,
yeah, I like to interrupt here regarding like AWS. What are sort of like deep learning services available in AWS, and like which one of these are free? If you have any idea, because some of us are like doing some courses, and we would like to know like if there's like something free or that's something that can be used by us.
sure. So when you sign up for the free tier account, you get one year access of AWS, in which a
Right.
lot of services are included, including Amazon SageMaker, which is a machine learning studio to do all your pre-process, train, and evaluate and launch your model on the services. And there are other services like let's say Amazon Transcribe. I was working on a problem related to a speaker diarization. In like let's say we are doing a conversion over here, and I want to write an automatic system which takes the whole script, our audio file, and segment it, classify it into a multiple speakers. Let's say this statement was uttered by Bhargav. This statement was given by Kaushal. This statement was given by Sanket. So that's called speaker diarization. And there are a lot of standalone models available. But if you want to use on AWS, there is the service called as AWS Transcribe, which is free up to 60 minutes per month. So you can process the
Right.
audio of 60 minutes for in a 1 month, that is for free. And if you want to use further, you need to pay the price. And their price are also manageable, like
Right.
$0.0004 per second, right? And if you have a lot of, let's say, big organizations and you want to work for 10 lakh minutes, there are discounts available. But as you ask the question, like which services are available for free,
Yeah.
most of them are available for a limited usage.
Okay.
For a limited usage, limited amount of time, most of them are available for free, and it's very simple. You just get those secret keys. If you just YouTube how to get AWS secret key, you saw that video, and take those keys and
Yeah.
start making a response from your Python code to AWS, and it will start working.
Right.
Like when you work with Google Colab, they provide you some GPU, TPU, like GPU that's a limit of 15 GB, like something is there something like that in AWS?
Yeah, AWS has some free tiers account, like uh, margin up to which you can use them. But if you really want to use a GPU, go with the Colab, because really you get GPU like P100 Quadro or MQ 6000. Their cost is around $5,000 to $6,100,
Oh,
and you can use them for 12 hours for free. And not just 12 hours. What they do is when you start an instance, after 12 hours they just clear your data, and after that you can use it again, right? And uh, and not just the GPU, they also provide TPU. Now so just to give you a heads up to all this, those who are new to this CPU, GPU, and TPUs. GPU is a consists lot of CPUs. It's not, don't take my words for like hardline. I'm just explaining an analogy to you. In CPU, we have 4 to 6 cores. In GPU, we have a 256, 512, or 1024 cores in a single GPU. So you can process your data parallelly, faster compared to CPU. And a TPU is form of a multiple GPU cores. So you can imagine how much processing power you get when you are using a TPU. And believe me, TPUs are a hell like costly. They are rarely available to buy for your own self. And if you are thinking to buy a TPU, please do not buy them. There are services which are available which gives access to TPU, in some cases free up to a certain level and with a very manageable price. So do not buy your own. It's like buying an elephant to do a 1 day job. When you can rent an elephant to like do a very heavy work and then give it back, they will maintain the elephant, feed it, and keep it clean. Why you want to buy an elephant to do a job which is you just want to do 1 day a week, and then you will also bear the charges of maintaining it, making sure it's a clean and everything. So I'm just giving an analogy using an elephant, because TPU is like an elephant thing. It's very heavy. It's provide an enormous amount of power to process your data, right?
I mean, like, I wish I could buy a TPU because we all can think of buying one, but at the end
They
of the
probably
day,
are not even letting us buy anything. Like they won't let you buy. It's not up for sale. They only let you rent it. Google.
I think, yeah. So,
So
So
yeah,
yeah, so
since we are in this side, let's talk about like the primary environment where we most of the models are trained. That is a notebook, uh, I
yeah,
Python notebook. Yeah.
sure. So Jupyter Notebook. It's something which we all have. Like when we heard first time about Jupyter Notebook, we were like, wow, we can do that. Like we can actually run our code cell by cell. It will be very easy to debug. It will be very fast to debug. But when you start using it, Jupyter Notebook, after using for a year, you will realize you are not a person who can write a production level code. Because definitely Jupyter Notebook helps you, like Python Notebook help you to speed up the debugging process, but it won't allow. It's like a bad habit. You will start creating random variable, like not sorry, not random variables. That's something else. But we'll start defining variables anywhere, just to keep your notebook running and to debug it. Because when we are debugging a code at morning 3 a.m., we don't want to go into this documentation and nitty gritty of a clean code. We just want to make sure that our code works at any cost. That's it. When we are doing that, we don't care about how how other person will understand your code. You just, I want this code to work at any cost. That's it. I don't care about cleanliness. I don't care about anything. At that time, you will realize that Jupyter notebooks are good while debugging, but not. It's a bad habit to write a production level. You need a kind of actual IDE. That's a VS Code. So whenever you are trying out different things, different models, go with the Colab Jupyter notebooks or Kaggle notebooks. But when you are writing a production ready code, go with VS Code or any IDE which you prefer.
Yeah. So I think like what like when we use notebooks, they are pretty much for like model training, testing, and getting the results and knowing the results. So it is sort of like when you use a notebook, it is mainly for the presentation. Like it is for the presentation purpose, like to show people how things are. And like we have something called markdown in it. So it is a markup
Hmm.
language where you can like sort of like write what we are doing and like in a nicely formatted way, like in the titles and
Better
uh,
document the notebook.
yeah, cool documentation thing. And but like yeah, you are pretty much right. Like we mess up the state and we like sort of tend to write statements instead of functions. And like what we learned in like we unforget the computer engineering things that we learned in the starting, like the
Definitely.
functions and OOPs and all sort of things.
And
Yep.
like major issue occur when you have a, like, let's say a very big Python notebook, consists of 50 to 60 cells. What happen is, let's say you have declared a variable alpha into the third cell, and by mistake you again declare a variable alpha into the 24th cell. So the original value will be overwritten by that particular variable, and then the process of debugging will start. So it's like, why my code is working differently? Like each and every time when I run different cells, it's giving me different output. But the issue is overriding the variable in a notebook, which could be avoided. Like I'm not perfectly sure it like you can mess up with the variables in the simple IDE environment as well, but it the there's a probability of doing that increases when you are using a notebook, a cell type of a cell structure.
So regarding that, like when you save a Kaggle notebook, it has two options. That is quick save, and that is whatever the state the notebook is in, save is as it is. And second is run all cell from the start and save it. So yeah, that is
Second
sort
option
of
is
like,
better.
yeah.
Second option is always better.
So
Yeah.
like,
So,
yeah,
okay, go on.
apart from the Python, we also have like R is a very good language for data science, and like TensorFlow is not something that is only to Python, but it is also there in R and even in JS now. So yeah,
Yeah.
so like Python is a like very common choice for people. Like it is a go-to language for some reasons, and like but still there are like languages, so you can like choose your own language and start of move into it. So yeah, there is no
Yes, I
constraint
wanted
like.
to raise that question. Like, people often use Python, but is there anything like any problem in which using other language like MATLAB or R wiser choice in Python?
See, R is a language for statisticians. I have used
Yeah.
R. It's like it is a completely different framework kind of thing. R is very good when handling large data to create a data pipelines. So the syntax of R is designed in a way that it's very easy to create a complete data pipeline without getting an intermediate variables. And second thing is their plot aesthetics. So Seaborn library is designed to create a similar effects of R. To create a
ggplot.
similar effects of ggplot. Yes, ggplot. Yeah. So R has a library called as ggplot and ggplot2, which is the latest, I think the latest version, and they are used for to plot your data. So just from my perspective, from my experience, if you are getting started with data science, start with Python. Do not go with the R directly. Otherwise, it will be like very hard to, it will be very hard start. Data scientists should know R, but it's good to start with Python, understand the overview, and then go with the R language. And MATLAB is also a good choice. But the best thing about MATLAB is the the modules which are already provided. So MATLAB has many inbuilt modules to analyze your data, and they are like spread into a vast variety. So you can do multiple things with those modules, and you don't need to write a code. That's the best thing about MATLAB. But if you're getting started, start with Python, then gradually move towards MATLAB, and then R if required.
Yeah, we sort of had started talking about Kaggle as well. So, if you can like elaborate a little bit about Kaggle.
Those who joined the engineering colleges and then, especially in computer science or IT field, you come across the word of competitive coding. Like you to enhance your coding skill to be more have a thoughts like algorithms. Kaggle, and there are platforms like CodeChef and HackerRank, which is a platform for the competitive coders. Kaggle is for data scientists. Same approach. Instead of writing the best working like for codes, you create models. In on Kaggle, they announce the competitions. Like they provide a data set publicly, and you have to participate alone or in a team, and you need to find a solution which matches the requirement. And in Kaggle, there are a lot of prizes available, because many competitions are launched by national laboratories, or sometimes Google also launches competitions, and prizes are in thousands of dollars. Like really, if you can go to achieve number one rank, you will get $25,000. But do not start doing Kaggle with this $25,000 motivation, because it will take you 6 to 7 years to reach at number one or up to that top 1%. Because those are not simple teams. They are people working in a multinational companies, and they are also taking part into a Kaggle and these competitions to keep their skills sharper.
Right. So again, like talking about Kaggle competitions, we have a Kaggle competition in Ingenium this time as well.
Yeah.
So for the data scientists out there, you should participate. And as like Bhargav just said, like we are going to give prize, but like And since this is a competition specially designed for like college graduates, I think you all should participate, and we won't be having the special teams that have like 6 to 7 years of experience, but obviously it's going to be competitive, a little bit competitive. So yeah, again, like I hope you all participate in that as well.
Like the first time we are hosting a career competition, right? Engineer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the
Yes.
first time we are doing a career
So
competition.
yeah, even we have kept in mind like the people who are not at all in data science, and they are like wanted to start things. Like we are going to sort of help you out, like give you some kind of beginners data, and you can like spend this time, like get into the competition, get into Kaggle, and like sort of like help you like make your first model there itself. So you are most
Yeah,
welcome to like sort of do that in the event. Yeah.
Like even if you are a
And
beginner, like I'd recommend like you should not be afraid to not win.
Yeah.
Rather
yeah,
take it as an experience.
yeah, definitely. Like you should always participate in competition. And believe me, best thing about Kaggle and this platform is like you can see others code. See, I'm not saying just copy paste it and run it. That's not gonna work. It may get you a good accuracy, but that's not how you're gonna win a competition. Or try to understand how they have implemented a model, because there are things like ensemble modeling and transfer learning and federated learning, which uses machine learning as a base and built on top of that. So when you do this, when you participate in this kind of competition, definitely you are not going to win at the first time, and not a 10th time or not a 20th time. But what happens is when you try for 21st time, you will have an idea how to handle that data. Your mind will start throwing ideas like, hey, I have like, remember when we see that notebook in which they have entered this kind of data like this? I think we can use that code over here and get this result like this. Yeah. So the day when you start having these thoughts, that's the day you will start your exponential progress, because it will take a lot of time to get these ideas. But once you start having it, sky is the limit.
You are muted, Kaushal.
yeah. Sorry. So okay, so that's really a great insight, and possibly talking about building models, and like sort of when you build models, you're sort of like the whole superset of sort of this all thing is called AI. And so that's, I think, that's the next sort of like section that we are going to discuss. Like will creating models really doom the world? Like, is it going to lead to some sort of like self-controlling robot that will build more robots and be the doom of humanity, or something like that? So what are your
Yeah.
views on this, Bhargav?
Okay, let me. You asked about my views. See, this statement is given by Elon Musk, and we all know that how that person is.
Yeah,
Even Iron Man's character is taken from the Elon Musk. Those who have read its biography, its book, Elon Musk, uh, written by written by Ashley. In the book, it has mentioned that when Iron Man's shooting was going on, Robert Downey Jr. went to meet him, and he gave personally the tour of Tesla factory. And that that overconfident character, that I can solve anything approach of Tony Stark, is taken from Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is
right.
considered as a real life Tony Stark.
Yeah,
And these are his views, that we need to be super careful with AI, potentially more dangerous than nukes. Yes, he is right, but the statement, will robot doom the world, or will we originally have a Ultron? Answer is
yeah,
straight no. And it's not my
yeah,
answer. Let me because I'm not like, see, I am also learning with you. I am not at a
yeah,
experience level who can answer this question, but I am answering this on the basis of feedback I have got from top researchers. So
right.
in the last summer, I was part of a summer school which was organized by a Cypher Mila Lab. So those who have heard about Cypher 10 and Cypher 100 data set, it is designed by the Cypher Lab. And it is like a Google Brain level research laboratory. And they organize summer school every week, and they invite professors from Stanford, Harvard, UC Berkeley, and all of them, even Yoshua Bengio, who is a Turing Award winner. They all have said that we in next 100 years we are not gonna see AI who is gonna surpass human capabilities. see, AI is good to perform one task. AI is very good to classify between dog and cats. But 4-year-old kid can also do that, right? And
Right.
let's say we say that uh, for humans, recognizing a tree is very easy task because our eyes and the brain is a result of 700 million years evolution, right? Right? But for machine, for a computer, if you say that, hey, can you identify that it's a tree by seeing these 100 examples, it will say it's a shoes. Believe me, 100 examples are not sufficient. But if you tell a computer that, hey, these are the equation, can you model the movement of all the galaxies and all the planets for next 1000 years? It will does that. Very accurately, it will do consider all the variables.
Very, very
So
good
the
example.
yeah, so uh, main catch, what main catch is over here is that computers are very good to do the tasks which are complex, but they don't have a common sense. Why they are good in doing complex tasks? Because they don't have feelings, they are fast, and they don't get bored. But if I give you to identify between dog and cat, after one or two like examples, you will get, okay, I'm being bored to classify between cat and dogs. I need something new. That is not the thing which with AIs. They do whatever you said with all their efficiency. That's their plus point. Our plus point is that we have a common sense. Machines don't have common sense. We are not still at a level where we can actually work on artificial general intelligence, where we implement this common sense into machines. And just to give you an example, I like one of the researcher at I think UC Berkeley. He's a head of computer vision. I exactly don't remember his name, but he gave a very wonderful example. We all have seen Titanic, right? I assume most of us watch Titanic, in which there was a scene when the sea water was coming into the Titanic, and everyone was like holding a bar to save themselves. They give this image to a model which tells about the image. Like if you give us a person of surfing a board to a model, it will say that this model, the human is surfing in a water. Do you know what that model predicted with this image of people saving their life? It said that
Very.
people are enjoying into the water by holding the pool. And
Yeah.
it's right. Actually, from the feelingless perspective, it's right because
Yes.
people were actually
Yeah.
holding the pole. They were in the water, and they were
Yeah.
half above the water, half into the water. So it's
Yeah.
general intuition. But if you look at the scenario, if you look at
Right.
the expressions, if you look at the conditions, that is something which is not done by computers. You
Uh,
know, so that's where the major difference comes between human and AI. So thinking about the Ultron and this, you know, Terminator and everything, it's not. I don't think it's a reality for at least up to 100 years. So definitely our generation will be passed on, so we don't need to worry about it. But yeah, definitely there may be chances that it surpass the human intelligence because we have a lot of computational powers. Quantum computing is rising. They provide a very enormous amount of computational power, but it's still it's evolving. It's not up to the level. So yes, it's a dangerous than nukes, but only if we use it like that, right? Because
Yeah.
the very cliche quote, each coin has two sides. A very cliche quote, and which is used by everyone, but that's reality. So there are plus points, there are
That's
negative points, but it's about it's on us how we are using it.
that's really like very well put, and I think that sort of gave us insights, and I think that will also motivate people listening that to probably take up AI or something related. Right. So
People's knowledge from regarding artificial intelligence comes from movies and like
yeah,
villains that are like robots and like all that. This has demotivated people and considered make them consider the AI may be a direction towards evil.
No. That's not gonna happen. At least not for next 100 years. And definitely, see, we are humans. We have created the AI. We are the one who have started it. Because we see that there is some possibility that it can assist us. It cannot surpass us, right? Whenever we say that AI is gonna take over the jobs, I would just give you one example. Like compare the jobs which were existing 50 years ago So there are a lot of jobs has been taken away by computers. Everyone says that the computers have taken away a lot of jobs, but also look at the positive perspective that it has created a lot of jobs. If you start finding a job of machine learning engineer or data scientist in 19, let's say 50, no one is going to hire you because that job never existed. There was no requirement. So as we are moving further in advancement of computer science and AI, let's say computer science as a whole, because AI is also part of a computer science. Uh, there will be jobs which will be vanished, repetitive jobs, but there will be 10 times more jobs which will be opening. So let's say after 50 years, let's say when we were having our kids, uh, the job which will be done by our kids, those jobs doesn't exist right now because they will be very, very different than what we think actually from a current scenario. So do not worry that jobs are getting snatched by AI. That's not it. It's creating a new jobs, right? It's kind of an evolution.
So I think even Andrew NG, like this is a sort of like question that like struck Andrew NG, and he sort of answered it in a very similar way. Like it is like you have to be up to date with the market, like what kind of skills are needed, and you have to learn those skills to like sort of face this changing and evolving and the world of yeah, the changing and evolving world due to AI.
So it's all about adaptation. Like humans are always best in adapting the situation.
This has
If you
happened
put
like
any person,
since centuries. Like even when like steam engines were invented and cars were made, the people that were working like they used to draw horse carts and something. They went unemployed. So like this has happened since quite a long time. Like when technology advances, the people whose jobs are like outdated, they go like they become unemployed.
and
Just
definitely
like
it creates a better job. Like
yeah.
doing a data entry in an Excel sheet and compare this job with the working on a latest technology or making a product using your deep learning model. So there are changes in a job. I'm not saying AI is not taking away job, but it's giving more, right? It's taking some jobs, but giving 10 times better jobs and in different fields. And that's the aspect which we should look at.
Right. So again, like that's very well put, and I think anyone who's listening must have gotten like really great insights because of that. So now we're moving like towards the end of our event or like talk, and so if would you like to share something more from your stories for everyone who has stayed till now and is listening?
Um,
So yeah.
from my story, I would say try to focus on doing something better uh, with whatever existing technology you have. Okay, whenever I have to take a project, we all know that in AU we have to do a lot of projects. So we have two choices: either select a simple project, finish it 100%ly, get a good grades, or take a very challenging project, finish it 20 to 30%, present to a faculty, and I'm not saying you will get less marks. You will get 10 out of 8. That is for sure. Each and every faculty is very supportive, and they will give you 10 out of 8. But the learning that you get by doing challenging things is bigger. So whenever, so it's from my, you can say it's a personal note that if you try to build things which are new, do not just make, you know, Bluetooth control robot car. That's not why you are doing engineering. You are doing engineering because you have to learn things and implement things in a better manner to make things better, to solve some problems. Try to correlate your machine learning skills with the problem. Like I have always worked into the two domains. I also work with the machine learning things and the research aspect. I also work into the field of environment and climate change. So and I always think how I can use AI to support do my provide my contribution in resolving the issue of climate
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. So yeah, so we have heard that you have worked a lot like in the field of environment, and so what sort of like projects have you done in climate change related to
So
data science or anything? Yeah.
so first project was predictions of uh, energy requirement. let's say there is we all know that there exists energy grids which distributes the energy up to a whole state or a country. But what we don't consider is how what happens if we have a excess of powers produced. We all talk about using renewable energy sources, but there is a very major concern associated in using renewable sources. The output of the, let's say we have a big plant of a solar plant, but the output is very varying. You cannot expect to run whole country on a solar plant or a renewable energy. You need a backup of a conventional energy generation. So what I project which I took was, can I predict the requirement of a single building for a one over the year? Let's say I know this building. Let's say I'm living in this building of flats, and for the next 1 year, the energy requirement would be that it follows some kind of pattern. So collecting those all patterns from a complete Ahmedabad, and let's say these patterns are given to a torrent power, so they can plan how to manage renewable sources in advance, because you cannot turn off nuclear power plant like, okay, we have energy for 2 days, let's turn off the plant for 2 days and we'll start after it. That's not possible, because once the plant is started, or once a coal based energy plant is started, you cannot shut it down. Either you need to get rid of that energy, or either you need to diverge it into a better into some other area. And many times what happen is, if plant cannot generate enough energy, we don't get energy, or many remote areas don't get energy. So the project which I took was into this particular area, how we can maximize the use of resources, optimally use resource in a better manner to get energy to everyone. My job was to use the data which was prepared by IIT Bombay students. So they have a complete building, a complete smart building, which is filled with smart monitors, which records the use of energy consumption every 5 seconds. And I have to predict the energy requirement of that building for next 1 year. This was a project I took during my machine learning course, and do it independently as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's a really interesting project.
yeah. Like I think like what you said, like solving problems, like that is like your uh, that is the core which drives you, like the motivation behind being an engineer. And sort of like it has been like a motto of many of my friends, and including myself, like that is why what drives you. Like if you are an engineer, that should be your aim, like solving problems.
The quote which we saw of Elon Musk, he has also said that engineering is the closest thing to magic, right? So those who have seen Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper considered engineers below physicians,
Yeah.
but it's not the case. Every engineer is equally respected, and it's job of each and every engineer to build better things, not just graduate from college and do a 9 to 5 job. It's not wrong in doing a 9 to 5 job, but you should always try to innovate even in your day-to-day routine as well. If you are doing a job, try to be as much productive in your job. Try to give a meaningful insight. That's because that's the role of engineer. We analyze things. We have an analytical mindset. That's why we have chosen engineering, right?
So yeah, like quoting that, even like uh, Geoffrey Hilton, like the father of DL, like even he himself, like what he like when he came out with the papers were published, and he was like really shocked how like people were using his research in different domains. And like that is sort of thing, like the engineering attitude, like you what you learned and you are using it to solve in various domain and problems that you know. Yeah. Okay,
Right.
so like I have a few questions here. And
Yeah, even I got some few questions. So
yeah, so I think I
you
will
can
ask
go
the
first.
interesting one. How to get internship at as data scientist?
Sorry.
How to get an internship in data science?
Okay. Uh, if you want to get an internship as a data scientist, see, when you are doing a bachelor's degree, people always give you a job role of software engineer. But if you are very passionate about doing a data science and AI things, uh, start doing by taking independent projects. Try to build. Start with a simple project. Let's say this classification task. We all have heard about that flower data set, iris data set.
Iris
Yeah. So
data.
start with a simple data set, make a project, put it on a GitHub. It's not a new thing. Okay. Then start with the MNIST data set, do a CNN predictions and everything, put it on a GitHub. So these simple projects, they are nothing new, but they will form a very strong foundation to understand these techniques, how to process data, how to clean data. And then start with the data engineering skills. So in first two cases, you just have ready-made data. You don't need to clean it, right? But what if you have a data with a very scattered data? So do text mining kind of a thing. So what I'm trying to say is build a project. Do not just say I have done 50 courses on Coursera, give me an internship. Nobody's going to give you internship like this. Build independent projects. So try to build 3 to 4 good projects in the field of data science. Let it be a repetitive project. Everyone in the world has done those projects. It's not required to uh, do some innovative in data science and then you will get an internship. Just make your foundation clear and do couple of projects on how to integrate a model. Not just build a model, but how to integrate it as well on a AWS and everything. And if you have these two in your command, then your resume is ready to do select to start getting apply for different companies. And do not apply to be to do a data science internship into a tech giants. They only consider masters and PhD degrees, and in very few cases they consider bachelor's degree. Try to build a foundation from the local startups. Try to be a data science or data analyst into a local startup, and then gradually as you move ahead, as you gain the experience, you will start getting opportunities by itself. But your first 2 to 3 years job is to, let's say you say I want to be a full-fledged data science or get a data science internship in next 1 to 2 years. Start by building projects, put it on your GitHub, write a couple of blogs on it. That's how you create a momentum. And when you participate in hackathon, it's the best place to get an internship. Believe me, I got my first internship from the engineers hackathon, like in the which happened I think previous year's hackathon.
Yeah.
So the company which came to sponsor, I think it was Oizom. So I work on that project during my hackathon, and after that I contacted them independently. Like I am a student, I have this background, and I want to be a data science intern at your organization. So they will take some interview, and if they finds you well, then yeah, you have got your first internship. And when you
Yeah.
get your first internship as a data scientist, that's from that moment you will start getting a momentum into this field.
Okay. We have like more questions, so I'll ask two of them together. So how important is probability and stochastic process in the whole world of data science, and what to start with initially, deep learning, data science, or MLAI? Yeah, so two different sort of questions, but
Okay. Uh, about the importance of probability and random process is very important.
okay.
You cannot skip probability and be a data scientist, machine learning engineer, or a researcher or AI engineer. But do not start with the probability. It should be after some of your understanding about machine learning and everything. But do not skip it, because see, probability is not the only important thing. Machine learning, AI, data science, it's a combination of calculus, linear algebra, and probability and statistics. These 4 fields combined create which is something known as machine learning. Because you need to knowledge of a calculus and differential equation, how to process matrix data, and how to use probability on the matrix data itself. So all of those things are essential and must to be a good data scientist, to be a great data scientist. So do not start with them, but definitely include them while you are learning.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point. Like, because like if you are using like linear regression, it is basically like how do I make a line? But like if you go into probability, then it is a lot of like it is a Gaussian distribution and a lot of things are there.
A lot of weird and always understand what is the meaning of expectation in probability. That's something, if you understand it clearly, a lot of things has been already
Yeah.
resolved. We just need to understand linear algebra, and then you are good to go with basics of machine learning and everything. Because everywhere there will be expectation. of any random variable or anything, and you have to understand it. What does it represents?
So yeah, my key for expectation is the mean with probability.
uh, in most of the cases it's correct, but when we had a question like and let me throw this open question to each and everyone. I'm not going to answer it. It's a very fun question and very weird question. Does mean and average are equal? Just after this session is over, Google it, try to understand it. What is the difference between mean and average? We use it interchangeably, but you will get a very not expected answer, and those unexpected things will be right. Yeah, average people can often be mean.
So yeah, the, have we gotten like any more questions from the chat, or if you can open the chat?
Uh,
Or,
yeah, so now I have like allow participants to unmute. So if anyone
yeah,
wants
yeah,
to speak up and ask something, like they are most welcome.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, you can unmute and speak up. Probably whoever wants to ask a question. Just two participants raised their hand.
Yes, Poojan, can you?
Yeah, so like I was preparing for one of my projects regarding the Markov processes and all. So like I was bit stuck over there. So like from where should I start? So if I'm approaching towards something related to the reinforcement learning, or if I'm going to the deep learning first. So what would be the base step from we must start over there?
So to start with the base step, you use the word Markov process. I would suggest start understanding Markov process and Markov state, how state changes will occur, and then include probability. So when you create the state diagram of a Markov process, you will have a probabilities associated with it. That with the 70% of probability, it will go from A to B. With the 30%, it will go from A to C. Then ask yourself a question: do I need to use reinforcement learning over here? If answer is yes, then start exploring reinforcement learning. Because when there are Markov decision process, there is reinforcement learning over there. Because reinforcement learning is built over the Markov process. And then above that, when you are implementing reinforcement learning and you have some issues or your model is not very accurate, then ask yourself, do I need a deep learning? Because we have a deep reinforcement learning as well, deep Q networks and everything, which replace the analytical function and use a neural network to estimate the probabilities. But be
Yeah.
careful with the your own attraction towards the words and your actual project requirement. So in a lot of cases, if you have a very simple project or you are just getting started, simple reinforcement learning would work very fine. So I hope I answer your question. And if there is some more clarity required, then please do let me know.
Okay, yeah, that was clear. Thank you so much.
Okay, we also have like one more raised hand. So if Vinay can ask.
Yeah. So you said that the initial period should be focused on exploring ML and seeing how things work, and that might help us in building our intuition. So, like if we zoom in this period, and because there are a lot of things that we can do in this period, so how should we plan about this period?
This
I mean,
This
like,
the initial period where because there are a lot of technologies that we
Which
can
slide
learn.
are you exactly talking about? Yeah, you can see the slides, no slide number on the left.
No, I'm not talking about any slide number. I'm just
no,
saying that
I got his question. So let me just repeat this question just for the confirmation. You are saying that when you are
yeah,
when you are in a beginner's period, where you should start, because there are lots of technologies and advices available, but which exactly is a good choice, right? Is this your question?
yeah. So where exactly to start, and like a more zoomed in version of the first 6 months, like where you said that where we should explore about machine learning.
So see, when you are starting with machine learning, let's say, let me first give you an overview, and then I will zoom into first 6 months. as I said, do not start with the maths until unless you are very passionate about doing maths, then you have a very strong understanding of it. Start with the simple things. Just try to learn NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, and sklearn. Only these 4 libraries.
Okay.
So for first 6 months, try to do let's say you do this course on Coursera of University of Michigan. So in that particular course itself, I think 4 or 5 months of course, in which there are total 5 courses, and each and every course will focus on one single library. So initially they start with NumPy, then gives you introduction and examples of pandas, and they gives a lot of assignments as well. So you will can practice them as well, and then it goes to a
Okay.
Matplotlib, then sklearn, and then they do text analysis using regex and other libraries. But first 4 courses are sufficient to give you a head start in your first 6 months, because once you are clear with how to handle data in pandas, how to visualize in Matplotlib, and not just visualize, but to understand what these visualizations are telling you. Because plotting is simple, plt.plot and provide x and y value, it will plot the chart. But when you try
Yeah.
to make an inference from the plot, that's a plus point. That's the thing which we should all learn as a data scientist. Plotting is just a syntax which is available on Google, but the intuitive mind, that inference capabilities are available in humans. So we need to use those capabilities and enhance them, and then gradually move ahead with this scikit-learn and other libraries. And then once you have a clear understanding of machine learning, then you can go with either maths or start with the deep learning as well. But in both of the
Okay.
cases, if you go with the hardcore mathematics, you at that point you also definitely have to learn maths. If you start with the deep learning perspective and do this deep learning.ai course, there also you need to understand the mathematics as well. So both of them are fine. It depends on your project requirements and how in which direction you want to move after your first 6 months learning.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We-
one more suggestion, like do not read 10 blogs on how to getting started. Right? It will confuse you. We all are different humans. We
Yeah.
all have different learning abilities and thought process and intuitive mind. So just see what you want to do and just jump into. You will automatically find a way. For first 1-2 months, you will struggle. You will hit your head with the walls. Like, what the hell is going on? Why I'm not being able to understand? Why this assignment is not working? And what they want me to do? But that struggle would be a beneficial once you move ahead. Do
Right.
not leave the path because it's a very tough. Just keep going. Even at a very small rate, keep going. After 1 year, you will laugh on your own self. Like, yeah, I was just hitting my, like I was getting irritated by this simple problem. But that's to get that attitude, you need to be there in the process. You need to struggle for 6 months. But after 6 months, you will get your own path. So try to create your own path. Learn from other people's, but follow your own path. Do not just copy paste that. Okay, that guy is working for 8 hours. He's 6 hours doing machine learning, 2 hours doing this work. Let me also do that, and I will also be like him. No, do not do that. Just follow your routine, your schedule, your path, and that's the, believe me, that's the best thing you can do.
yeah, I we hope that answered your question.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions, or should we like wrap it up because we are way over time?
Yeah, actually,
So,
I think I should
Yeah.
apologize
Yeah.
because
Thank you.
closing time was 10:30 and now it's around 11:15. So
I mean,
I apologize
yeah,
as well, and thank you very much for all the participants who have left. That's a great amount of enthusiasm you have, because staying
yeah,
up at till 11:15, like we do it every day, but just to learn new things, it requires a different kind of motivation and encouragement.
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Thank you
think
so
like
much. Like it was a really good. Like we were a lot of new things we learned about it. From where should we start and approach for the data science and AI ML. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
yeah, and I think like thank you for staying with us till like 11:15.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we expected to go till 11, and I think that's normal. But like, we also see a lot of people have stayed, and like, thanks a lot to you as well.
Yes,
Because as Bhargav said, like, it requires some sort of like enthusiasm and curiosity to stay up for learning something new. So
Yeah, I think it is sort of the thing where you like, when you start a Coursera course and then you like finish your first session and they give you the
yeah,
probability that yeah, this many people have sticked like after finishing the next couple of sessions sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
okay.
So thank you everyone. Thank you Bhargav for joining us today.
Yes,
And
thank you, Bhargav.
And like if
Yeah.
anyone who is right now here wants to connect me from personally, like if you want to have any doubt, just feel free to contact me. Let me just share my email ID over here, because
Yes.
if you want to contact, you just drop me an email, and I'm like, believe me, I'm more active on email rather than WhatsApp. And you can always connect me on LinkedIn to just get your doubts clear. So without hesitation, just drop me a message, and I will definitely try to give you as clear answer as possible.
Great. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thank you everyone as
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you very much for hosting me. It was a really
Thank
wonderful
you.
experience. After like such a long time, we had this kind of discussion, and
Yeah.
and like all nitty gritties of data science and everything. So that was really a wonderful session. It's always amazing to talk, like take this kind of a sessions.
Yeah. I think it was really informative for us as well. And it's also really great that you are contributing so much to the field of data science. Like you are TA for like computer vision as well. And I've heard that you're helping our students quite well. And also thanks a lot for those contributions as well. And always helping us learn more about data science.
Anytime.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's record.
Thank you, everyone.
Arpit, if you can stop recording.